Imagine sitting at a table full of people who love you, dressed in your finest clothes, on the night that was supposed to celebrate 10 years of marriage, and watching your husband walk through the door with another woman on his arm, smiling like he had done absolutely nothing wrong. Now imagine, instead of falling apart, instead of crying or shouting or begging, you simply reach into an envelope, slide a stack of papers across the table, and walk out of that restaurant with your head held so high that the room goes completely silent. That is exactly what Joy did. And the most powerful part? She had planned it for months. This is her story. There was nothing particularly unusual about the street where Adeaze Joy Okafor grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. It was a loud, colorful, wonderfully busy kind of street, the kind where pepper soup smells drifted out of open windows, where children chased each other between parked cars, and where market women called out prices with voices strong enough to compete with the afternoon traffic. Joy grew up right in the middle of all of it, and from the very beginning, she was paying attention to everything. Her mother sold fabric at the local market, bright bolts of Ankara and lace that women from all over the neighborhood came to touch and admire. Her father was a retired school teacher who spent his evenings reading and his mornings reminding his children that education was the one thing no one could ever take from them. They were not a wealthy family, but they were a family rich in something far more lasting: wisdom, love, and an unshakable belief that hard work always paid off eventually. Joy was the kind of child who asked questions that made adults pause before answering. Why does that trader always sell out before noon? Why do some businesses close in 2 years while others last for 20? Why does saving feel hard but spending feel easy? She kept a small notebook, a simple orange exercise book, where she wrote down everything she observed about money, trade, and people. While her friends filled their notebooks with song lyrics and the names of their favorite celebrities, Joy filled hers with observations and calculations. When she was 9 years old, she started helping her mother at the market on weekends. She did not just sit and watch. She memorized prices, tracked which fabric sold fastest, and started noticing patterns that even some grown women at the market had never stopped to think about. By the time she was 12, she had saved up enough from her small errands and market work to start her very first business: homemade chin-chin, bagged in small transparent packets and sold to her classmates at school for 50 naira each. It was not a big business, but it was hers, and she treated it like it was worth 1 million naira because she understood even then that big things grow from small beginnings, not from big talk. Her father used to say something to her that she never forgot. He would look at her over the rim of his reading glasses and say, "Joy, money is not your master. You are its master. Always remember who is in charge." She wrote that down too. She wrote down everything worth keeping. By the time Joy finished secondary school, she was not the most popular girl in her class. She was not the loudest or the funniest or the one everyone noticed when she walked into the room, but she was the most prepared. She graduated near the top of her class, earned a place at one of Nigeria's best universities, and paid part of her application fees from money she had saved over years of small, steady decisions. Her parents cried at her graduation, not just because they were proud, but because they recognized something in their daughter that is rare and precious. She had learned while still young that every good choice is a brick, and if you lay enough bricks with care, eventually you look up and realize you have built yourself a house. Thousands of miles away from Lagos, in a small apartment in Seoul, South Korea, a boy named Park Min-jun was growing up with a very different kind of fire in his chest. Min-jun was the youngest son in a family that had once owned a well-loved restaurant in their neighborhood, a warm, busy place that smelled of dojang jjigae and grilled meat, where regular customers came not just for the food, but for the feeling of being welcomed. Minjun remembered that restaurant the way people remember something they loved before they understood it was possible to lose it. It closed when he was 10. His father had borrowed money to expand too quickly, trusted the wrong business partner, and by the time the damage was visible, it was too late to stop it. The neighborhood talked. Minjun heard the whispers even when the adults thought he was not listening. He saw the way his father's shoulders dropped when he walked past the empty building that used to belong to their family. And something hardened inside the young boy. A fierce, burning determination that he would be successful, that no one would ever whisper about his failure, that he would prove, once and for all, that the Park family name stood for something. That kind of determination is not a bad thing on its own. Drive and ambition are powerful tools when used wisely. The problem with Minjun was that not that he wanted to succeed, it was that he wanted to succeed quickly. He wanted the result without fully committing to the process. He wanted to skip the part where things are hard and uncertain and slow and jump straight to the part where people respect you and your name means something. He was charming, genuinely so. He had a smile that made people at ease and a way of speaking that made even ordinary ideas sound exciting. He studied business at university in Seoul and graduated with decent results, carried along partly by his natural charisma and partly by short bursts of hard work whenever things got urgent. His professors liked him, his classmates liked him, but one professor, a quiet, sharp-eyed man who had watched many students pass through his classroom, once pulled Minjin aside after a lecture and said something that should have stayed with him forever. Minjun, a building with no foundation looks tall until the wind comes. Minjun nodded, thanked his professor, and walked out into the afternoon sunshine without truly letting the words settle. He was already thinking about his next idea, his next opportunity, his next shortcut to the life he had promised himself. After university, he launched a small technology startup aimed at helping Korean small businesses manage their inventory digitally. It was a smart idea, but Minjun rushed it. He underpriced his service to get clients fast, spent money on appearances before the product was strong, and made partnership decisions based on excitement rather than careful thought. The company limped along for years, never dying completely, but never truly thriving either. Minjun kept believing that the breakthrough was just around the corner, that one big deal would change everything, that patience was something other people needed, but not him. He was not a villain. That's important to understand. He was a man with real potential who never been taught, or never chose to learn, that the most important victories in life are quiet, slow, and built on honesty. Joy was 28 years old when she stood on a stage in Abuja at one of West Africa's largest international business conferences and gave a speech that people in the audience still talked about years later. She had not planned to be on that stage. The original speaker had fallen ill 2 days before, and the conference organizers had reached out desperately to several young business leaders they had been watching. Joy had 7 hours to prepare. She spent 6 of them researching and 1 of them writing, because preparation had always been her greatest advantage. She spoke about African women in business, not in the way people sometimes speak about it, full of grand words and very little substance. She spoke with numbers, with examples, with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from someone who has actually done the work. She talked about how a young girl selling chin-chin in Lagos was learning the same economic lessons as a Harvard business student, just in a different classroom. She talked about how the future of African economies was already being built by women who had never been invited into a boardroom, but had been running businesses from market stalls and kitchen tables for generations. When she finished, the applause was not the polite kind. It was the kind that meant something. Sitting in the 3rd row, Minjun heard every word. He had come to Abuja looking for partnerships, African contacts who might be interested in technology solutions for local businesses. His company needed a lifeline, though he would never have admitted that to anyone at the conference. He put on his best suit and his most confident smile and told himself, as he often did, that everything was about to turn around. He was not expecting to be genuinely moved by a speech, but Joy's words cut through the noise of the conference in a way that surprised him. He found her afterward, near the water station, and introduced himself with the kind of ease that came naturally to him. She was polite and measured. Joy did not trust charm the way some people did, because she grew up watching her mother deal with fast-talking traders who promised wonderful things and delivered very little. But there was something in Minjun's genuine curiosity that she found disarming. He did not perform interest. He actually asked questions and listened to the answers. They talked for 40 minutes that afternoon about business, about their countries, about jollof rice versus bibimbap, about the particular pressure that both Nigerian and Korean families place on their children to succeed and make the family proud. They laughed at the same things, they challenged each other comfortably. Over the following 2 years, they met again at other conferences, exchanged ideas over long emails, and gradually let the professional respect grow into a deeper friendship. When he proposed, he did it simply and sincerely. No grand performance, just a quiet dinner, and the kind of honesty Joy had always valued. She said yes. Their wedding in Lagos was a beautiful meeting of two worlds. The drums and aso oke and joyful Igbo songs on one side, the calm elegance and heartfelt Korean bows on the other. Both families cried, both families danced, and for a moment it genuinely felt like something wonderful and lasting had begun. The first few years of their marriage were genuinely good. Not perfect, no honest marriage ever is, but good in the ways that truly matter. They learned each other's rhythms. Joy cooked jollof rice. Minjun learned to season it properly after 3 failed attempts. He introduced her to Korean dramas. She pretended to find them less interesting than she actually did. They traveled between Lagos and Seoul with the kind of ease that people develop when two places genuinely feel like home. And Joy built. Joy Build Enterprises, the technology company she had launched to connect African farmers with international buyers, grew at a pace that surprised even the people who believed in it from the beginning. She understood her market better than almost anyone because she had grown up inside it. She made decisions carefully, hired honest and talented people, refused to cut corners even when corners could have been cut cheaply, and reinvested her profits back into the company year after year. By the time she was 33, Joy Build was operating in 6 African countries. By 35, it was a name that appeared in international business reports. By her late 30s, Adeyeze Joy Okafor, the girl with the orange exercise book and the bags of chin-chin, was a billionaire. She did not change the way some people change when money arrived. She still called her mother every morning. She still kept a notebook. She still asked questions and listened carefully to the answers. She wore beautiful clothes now, yes, and moved through the world with the kind of ease that financial freedom provides. But the foundation of who she was, disciplined, thoughtful, deeply principled, remained exactly as it had always been. Minjun's company, meanwhile, continued to struggle. Joy helped him, genuinely, generously, without making him feel small about it. She connected him with suppliers and clients through her network. She sat with him on Sunday evenings and looked at his business plans and offered honest advice. 3 separate times over the course of their marriage, when his company was on the edge of collapse, she invested her own money to keep it standing. She did these things because that is what she believed love looked like in practice. Not just words, but presence and action. But something was shifting in Minjun, quietly and gradually, in the way that the most dangerous changes always happen, slowly enough that by the time you notice, it has gone quite far. Standing in the shadow of Joy's success began to shrink something in him. He had always wanted to be the one people admired, the one whose name people said with respect. Instead, he was increasingly introduced as Joy's husband, pointed to at events as someone whose company only survived because of his wife's generosity. His pride, that same wounded pride that had driven him since he was a 10-year-old boy listening to the neighborhood whisper about his father's failure, began to turn sour inside him. Instead of sitting with that discomfort and growing from it, which is the harder and more honorable path, Min Jun began to look for easier comfort. He traveled more, he spent more time with people who admired him without knowing too much about him, and eventually he found Yuna, a Korean event planner who laughed at all his jokes, who looked at him the way he had always wanted to be looked at, who never challenged him, never pushed him, never asked the hard questions that Joy had always asked with love. Joy was building. She was busy, focused, giving her best energy to the company that fed thousands of people up and down its supply chain. She trusted Min Jun completely because she had never been the kind of person to look for problems where she did not yet see them. And Min Jun, knowing this, used her trust like a door he walked through without thinking about what it would cost to close it again. It was a Tuesday, ordinary in every way except the one that mattered. Joy was at her desk before 7 in the morning, the way she almost always was. Cup of tea beside her laptop, a neat list of the day's priorities in her notebook. Her personal assistant, a sharp young woman named Kemi, who had been with her for 4 years, was sorting the morning emails remotely before Joy arrived at the office. The email arrived in Joy's inbox by mistake. Kemi had meant to archive it after flagging a supplier thread in the same chain, but a wrong click sent the entire conversation forward instead. By the time Kemi realized the error and sent a panicked message asking Joy to please delete it unread, Joy had already opened it. She read it slowly, twice. Then she closed her laptop, placed both hands flat on her desk, and looked at the wall in front of her for a very long time. The emails between Min Jun and Yuna were not ambiguous. They spoke to each other with the kind of familiarity that made the truth entirely clear. There were plans for trips, references to time spent together, the easy shorthand of two people who had been keeping a secret for long enough that they stopped being careful about it. Joy did not scream. She did not pick up the phone and call Min Jun. She did not send a furious reply. She sat very still, and she breathed, and she let herself feel the full weight of what she had just learned, because she was wise enough to know that grief unacknowledged does not disappear, it simply grows in the dark. She drove home that evening, walked past the living room where Min Jun's jacket was hanging on the chair, went to her garden and sat there until the stars came out. Her mind was not racing. It was settling, the way silt settles at the bottom of water when the surface finally stops being disturbed. By the time she went inside, she knew exactly what she was going to do, and she knew exactly how she was going to do it. The next morning, she called Mrs. Adeyemi. Mrs. Adeyemi was not just a lawyer. She was the kind of legal mind that large corporations paid enormous amounts of money to think 5 steps ahead on their behalf. Joy had worked with her for years on corporate matters, and she trusted her completely. Their first meeting lasted 3 hours. Their second lasted 4. Over the following weeks, with the kind of methodical focus that had built her company from scratch, Joy and Mrs. Adeyemi worked through every detail of what needed to happen. Joy Build Enterprises was protected absolutely. Every investment Joy had made before and during the marriage was documented, categorized, and legally secured. The 3 times she had saved Min Jun's company were recorded as loans, not gifts, because Mrs. Adeyemi had always been careful about this, even when Joy had not been thinking about divorce as a possibility. The divorce papers were drafted, reviewed, revised, reviewed again, and finally signed by Joy on a calm Thursday morning, 8 months after the Tuesday she had sat at her desk and read an email she was never supposed to see. She told only her mother, just her mother, and no one else. Her mother came to her house that same evening and held her daughter's hands across the kitchen table without saying a word for a long time. Then she said, quietly, and with the certainty of a woman who had watched her daughter her whole life, "You did not fail, my daughter. You simply outgrew someone who stopped trying to keep up." Joy allowed herself one night of real grief. She cried the way people cry when they mourned not just a person, but a future they had believed in, the growing old together, the shared memories still to be made, the version of the story she thought she was living. She let herself feel it all, fully and honestly. And then she folded it away, straightened her back, and returned to the work of protecting her life. Min-jun organized the anniversary dinner himself. He reserved a private section of one of Lagos's most exclusive restaurants, sent elegant invitations to close family and friends from both sides, and arranged flowers and a customized menu. He was proud of the gesture. He was feeling, in the particular way that people sometimes feel when they have not truly examined their own behavior, that a beautiful dinner would reset something, that it was an act of care rather than what it actually was, which was performance. He did not know what Joy knew. He did not know about the Tuesday morning email, the meetings with Mrs. Adeyemi, the months of quiet and deliberate preparation. He had watched Joy continue to be warm and composed and present at home, and he had interpreted her steadiness as acceptance, as the sign of a woman who would always remain regardless of what he did. This was perhaps the most significant misunderstanding of his life, and it had been building for years. Joy arrived at the restaurant before him. She greeted the families on both sides with the genuine warmth she had always carried, embracing Min-jun's mother, who had always loved her, laughing softly with her own aunties, making everyone feel the ease and grace that she brought to every room she entered. She was wearing a deep gold Ankara gown, the kind of gold that does not ask for attention, but simply has it. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who knew herself completely. Before she sat down, she placed a slim sealed envelope beside her plate. No one asked about it. Joy did not draw attention to it. Then Min-jun arrived, with Yuna beside him. He introduced her to the table with a casualness that was either breathtaking dishonesty or a level of delusion that was difficult to comprehend, explaining that Yuna was a close friend who had happened to be in Lagos and that he had thought it would be nice for her to join the celebration. His eyes moved to Joy's face as he said it. He was watching for the reaction he expected, the flash of hurt, the trembling lip, the eyes that filled and looked away. Joy looked at him evenly. She said nothing for a moment. The table had gone very quiet in the particular way that rooms go quiet when something important is about to happen, and everyone present can feel it, but no one can name it yet. Then Joy reached beside her plate, picked up the envelope, and slid it gently but firmly across the table to Min-jun. "I believe these belong to you," she said. Her hands did not shake. Min-jun looked at the envelope. He looked at Joy. He picked it up and opened it with the slow, uncertain movement of someone whose body already knew what his mind was not ready to accept. The divorce papers were complete, signed, stamped, and filed with the court that very morning. Every clause was in order. Joy Build Enterprises and all of Joy's personal investments were untouched. The settlement was fair, documented, and legally unbreakable. There was nothing to argue, nothing to appeal to in the moment, nothing that Min-jun could say or do at that table that would change a single line of what Joy had already put in motion. He looked up at her, and what he saw in her face was not anger. It was not satisfaction either. It was simply the calm, clear expression of a woman who had made a decision with her whole mind and stood behind it completely. Joy rose from her seat. She thanked everyone for coming. She held Minjun's mother for an extra moment because she loved that woman and wanted her to know it. She hugged her own mother last, and her mother squeezed her hand once, firmly, and let her go. And then Joy walked out of that restaurant without raising her voice, without a single dramatic word, without giving anyone a scene to whisper about except the only one that mattered: the image of a woman leaving with every piece of her dignity fully intact. The room stayed silent for a long time after she was gone. A year passed, then another. Joy Build Enterprises expanded into 3 new African countries. Joy was invited to address the United Nations on the economic contributions of women entrepreneurs in developing nations. She was on the cover of 3 major international business publications in a single year. None of this was new to her in the sense of being unexpected. She had worked toward these things steadily and patiently, but there was a lightness to it now, a sense of moving through her own life without the quiet weight she had been carrying for longer than she had admitted to herself. She launched a scholarship fund for young Nigerian girls with an interest in business and finance. She called it the Kobo Fund, because every great thing she had ever built started with one small coin, one small decision, one page of an orange exercise book. The fund paid full university fees for its recipients with one condition attached. Each girl had to write at the beginning and end of every school year a letter to her younger self explaining what she had learned about money, dignity, and the value of her own choices. Joy read every letter personally. She kept them in a file in her office. Minjun's story, the narrator must tell honestly, did not end in ruin, but it ended in a reckoning that was long overdue. Without Joy's investments and professional network holding his company up, it finally closed. Yuna, who had been attracted to a version of Minjun that had always depended on borrowed success, found reasons to leave within months. Minjun was left for the first time in his adult life with nothing to stand on except himself. And it turned out that was exactly what he had needed all along. Reports reached Joy through mutual acquaintances that he had gone back to Seoul, taken a quiet job at a mid-level company, and was for the first time actually learning his industry from the ground up instead of trying to leap to the top of it. Whether his story eventually became one of genuine growth, no one could say for certain, but the possibility was there, and that was more than it had been before. Joy did not speak about him badly. When journalists or interviewers pushed her on the subject of her marriage, she redirected with the kind of grace that made people respect her even more. When close friends asked how she truly felt, she answered honestly that she loved him, that it hurt, that she had healed, and that she had never once regretted the morning she decided to respond with wisdom instead of rage. In the final scene of this story, Joy is in her garden, the same garden where she sat that Tuesday evening with the weight of everything she had just discovered pressing down on her shoulders. The same garden, but a completely different woman in it. Or perhaps the same woman, more fully herself than she had been in years. Her mother is beside her. Between them on a small table are 2 cups of tea and a plate of chin-chin, the homemade kind, because some things deserve to stay exactly as they always were. And at Joy's feet, cross-legged on the grass with an exercise book open across her knees, is Joy's niece, 10 years old, bright and curious and already full of questions that make adults pause before answering. The girl looks up and asks, "Auntie Joy, how do you become successful?" Joy looks at her for a moment. Then she says, "Write down every good decision you make today, every single one, no matter how small, because someday you will look back at those pages and see exactly how you built your life." The little girl writes it down. Every word. Joy's story is not just about a marriage that ended. It is about what is possible when a person knows their worth and refuses to abandon it, not even for love, not even for the comfort of staying in something familiar, not even for the fear of what people might say. She was educated, and she used her education. She was disciplined, and she let that discipline protect her. She was hurt, and she chose wisdom over reaction. She lost something real, and she did not pretend otherwise. But she also did not let that loss become the loudest thing in her story. Young readers, you are building your life right now with every small choice you make. The habit of saving, the decision to study when you could be distracted, the choice to tell the truth when a lie would be easier, the courage to walk away from things that do not honor you. These things seem small today, but Joy was once 10 years old with an orange exercise book, counting every kobo. Look where those small choices took her. If this story moved you, challenged you, or taught you something, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. A friend, a daughter, a niece, a student, a woman in your life who is building something quietly and faithfully and deserves to be reminded that her hard work matters. Drop a comment below. What was the one lesson from Joy's story that stayed with you most? Was it the way she protected her business before the storm hit? The dignity she carried into that restaurant? Or the little girl at the end with the exercise book? Tell us, because stories grow when people talk about them, and every conversation you start about self-worth, smart choices, and dignity is a conversation that could change someone's direction completely. Like, share, come back for the next story.